Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Colton stared at his reflection in the hallway mirror. His auburn hair tousled from a long day at college, his broad shoulders filling out the faded band t-shirt he wore. At 21, he prided himself on his rugged image, the kind that turned heads on campus. But that afternoon, as he cornered his younger brother in the living room, that pride twisted into something uglier. His brother, Elias, 19 and slender with a gentle demeanor, had always been different, effeminate in his gestures, soft-spoken and unapologetic about it. Colton had teased him relentlessly growing up, but today it escalated. Elias had been practicing a dance routine for a theater club, his movements fluid and graceful, when Colton burst in laughing.
"Look at you, prancing around like a fairy!"
Colton sneered, shoving Elias lightly but enough to make him stumble.
"When are you gonna man up? Dad's gonna disown you if you keep this up."
Elias's face flushed, his eyes welling with hurt, but he said nothing, just straightened his shirt and turned away. Colton pressed on, mimicking Elias's walk with exaggerated swishes, drawing out cruel laughter from deep in his chest. It felt like power, like asserting dominance in their shared home. That's when their father, a stern man named Harlan with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense attitude honed from years running a construction business, walked in from the garage. He froze, tools still in hand, his face darkening as he took in the scene.
"Colton! What the hell do you think you're doing?"
His voice boomed, echoing off the walls. Elias slipped away quietly to his room, leaving Colton to face the storm alone. Harlan set his tools down with a clatter, his eyes narrowing.
"I've had it with this macho bullshit of yours. Bullying your own brother because he doesn't fit your idea of a man? You're 21, for God's sake. Act like it."
Colton shrugged, trying to play it off.
"It's just joking around, Dad. He needs to toughen up."
But Harlan wasn't buying it. He'd seen too much of this over the years, the way Colton's taunts chipped away at Elias's confidence.
"No more. You're spending your summer break learning a lesson you won't forget. Starting tomorrow, you're living as a woman. You'll understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of that crap."
Colton's jaw dropped, laughter bubbling up in disbelief.
"What? That's insane."
But Harlan was dead serious.
"You'll go by Dorothy, and you'll dress the part, act the part, every single day until fall semester starts. No arguments. Now get some sleep. We're going shopping first thing."
The next morning dawned bright and unforgiving. Colton trudged behind his father into the bustling mall, his cheeks burning with embarrassment even before they stepped into the women's clothing section. Harlan led the way with purpose, ignoring Colton's protests.
"This is humiliating,"
Colton muttered, but Harlan shot him a look.
"Good. Maybe it'll sink in."
They started in a department store where Harlan picked out a complete feminine wardrobe. First came the basics: soft cotton panties in pastel shades, bras with gentle padding for shape, and stockings that felt alien against Colton's skin as he tried them on in the fitting room under his father's watchful eye. Then the dresses. Harlan selected several teal summer dresses, light and flowing, with delicate floral patterns that skimmed the knees. Colton emerged from the changing room in the first one, the fabric swishing around his legs, his auburn hair falling awkwardly over his shoulders. He felt exposed, vulnerable, the mirror reflecting a stranger back at him.
"This is ridiculous,"
he said, but Harlan nodded approvingly.
"It suits you. We'll take 3 of these."
Next, white sandals with thin straps that buckled around the ankles, simple yet elegant,
forcing Colton to adjust his stride to something more measured. They moved to accessories, a handbag in soft leather, earrings that clipped on since Colton's ears weren't pierced, and a necklace with a small pendant. Harlan even picked out makeup essentials, a starter kit with foundation, lipstick, and mascara. By the time they left, arms laden with bags, Colton's initial outrage had simmered into a numb dread. Back home, Harlan supervised the transformation. "From now on, you're Dorothy," he said firmly. "No going back. This is your summer." In the bathroom, Dorothy, Colton no longer, stared at the array of products. Her hands shook as she applied foundation, blending it over her stubbled chin after a close shave. The mascara was trickier. The wand felt foreign, and her first attempts left clumpy lashes. But she persisted, watching tutorials on her phone, her auburn hair brushed out to frame her face softly. She slipped into one of the teal dresses, the material cool against her skin, and stepped into the white sandals. Walking to the mirror, she practiced balancing, her steps tentative at first. Downstairs, Elias glanced up from his book, his eyes widening.
"You look different,"
he said softly, without mockery. Dorothy felt a pang, remembering her own harsh words. "Yeah, well, Dad's idea," she replied, her voice pitched higher in an attempt to match the image. Harlan nodded. "Dinner as Dorothy. Let's see how it feels." That first evening was a whirlwind of discomfort. Sitting at the table in the dress, Dorothy crossed her legs carefully, aware of every rustle of fabric. Harlan made small talk about work, but Elias avoided eye contact, perhaps still stinging from the day before. After dinner, Dorothy retreated to her room, kicking off the sandals and collapsing onto the bed. The humiliation burned, but as she lay there, staring at the ceiling, a strange curiosity flickered. What if this wasn't just punishment? The following days blurred into a routine of adaptation. Mornings began with makeup practice. Dorothy mastered the mascara, learning to separate her lashes with a light touch, her auburn hair often tied back to keep it out of the way. She experimented with lipstick, choosing a soft pink that complemented the teal dresses. Walking in the white sandals became second nature, her gait shifting to a graceful sway without conscious effort. Harlan insisted on outings to reinforce the lesson. One afternoon, they visited the park, Dorothy in her teal dress and sandals, feeling every glance from passers-by like a spotlight. An older woman complimented her outfit, saying, "That color brings out your eyes, dear." Dorothy mumbled a thank you, her cheeks flushing, but inside, a tiny spark of pride ignited. Back home, she helped with chores, folding laundry in her dress, the movements feeling oddly natural. Elias warmed up gradually. One evening, as Dorothy practiced her walk in the living room, he offered a tip. "Try smaller steps. It looks more elegant." Dorothy hesitated, then tried it, surprised at how right it felt. They talked that night, really talked, for the first time in years. Elias shared stories of the harassment he'd faced at college, the snide comments about his mannerisms. Dorothy listened, empathy blooming where mockery once lived. "I never realized how much it hurt," she admitted, her voice soft. As weeks passed, Dorothy delved deeper into her new life. She discovered a pair of crimson heels in the back of the shopping bags. Harlan must have slipped them in. They were sleek, with a modest 2-inch heel, and she spent hours practicing in them, starting on carpet before venturing to the hardwood floors. The click-clack echoed through the house, a rhythm that grew confident. Walking in them transformed her posture, elongating her spine, making her feel poised and empowered. She began accessorizing more, adding a scarf to her outfits or pinning her auburn hair with clips. Makeup evolved from necessity to art. She blended eyeshadows in subtle earth tones, highlighting her features. Outings expanded, grocery shopping with Harlan, where she pushed the cart in her crimson heels, chatting with the cashier about recipes. Each interaction chipped away at the initial shame, replacing it with a budding self-assurance. One rainy afternoon, alone in her room, Dorothy stood before the full-length mirror, twirling in a teal dress, the crimson heels adding height and grace. She examined her reflection, tracing the lines of her face softened by makeup, her auburn hair cascading in waves. Something shifted inside her, a recognition that this wasn't just an act. The femininity she'd been forced into resonated deeply, awakening feelings long suppressed. Memories flooded back, childhood moments of sneaking into her mother's closet, trying on dresses in secret, only to bury the urges under layers of expected masculinity. That evening, as the family gathered for a movie, Dorothy sat beside Elias, their shoulders brushing comfortably. When a scene depicted a character facing gender prejudice, she felt tears prick her eyes. Elias noticed, squeezing her hand.
It's okay,
He whispered. The empathy she'd developed for him mirrored her own internal struggle, forging a bond stronger than before. Summer progressed with small adventures. Dorothy joined Elias for a theater workshop, dressed in her teal ensemble and white sandals, participating in improv exercises that required vulnerability. She laughed freely, her voice light, connecting with others who shared stories of self-discovery. Harlan observed from afar, his stern facade softening as he saw the change. By midsummer, Dorothy had fully embraced the routine. Mornings involved styling her auburn hair into loose curls, applying mascara with expert flicks, and choosing between the white sandals for casual days or the crimson heels for a boost of confidence. She cooked meals in her dresses, the aprons tying neatly over the teal fabric, and even gardened, kneeling carefully to avoid stains. Interactions with neighbors added layers. One day, while walking in the crimson heels to the mailbox, a friendly woman from down the street waved. "New to the neighborhood? Love your style." Dorothy smiled genuinely, engaging in conversation about local events. These moments built her resilience, turning potential harassment into opportunities for connection. Elias and Dorothy grew inseparable. They spent evenings on the porch, sharing dreams, Elias about performing arts, Dorothy tentatively exploring her own aspirations, perhaps in fashion or writing. The bullying of the past seemed distant, replaced by mutual support. Harlan noticed, pride flickering in his eyes during family dinners, where laughter filled the air. As the season waned, Dorothy's internal world deepened. She journaled late at night, her auburn hair spilling over the pages as she wrote about the liberation she felt. The punishment had peeled back layers, revealing a truth she'd hidden even from herself. One particularly warm evening, after mastering a new makeup technique that accentuated her cheekbones, she confided in Elias. "This feels right, like I've been waiting for this." The turning point came on a quiet Sunday. Harlan called Dorothy into his study, the room lined with books and family photos. She entered in her favorite teal dress, crimson heels clicking softly, her auburn hair neatly brushed.
"Summer's almost over,"
Harlan said, his tone measured.
"Have you learned your lesson?"
Dorothy sat, her hands folding in her lap, tears welling as emotions surged. "Dad, It's more than that. What started as punishment, it's become who I am. I've developed empathy for Elias, yes, but I've also recognized something in myself. A suppressed gender identity that's always been there. I want to continue living authentically as a woman. Please, let me. Harlan's eyes softened, surprise mixing with understanding. He reached across the desk, taking her hand. I never expected this, but if it's what you need. Their conversation stretched into the night, tears flowing as Dorothy shared her journey from humiliation to self-acceptance. In the days that followed, Dorothy's life as a woman solidified. She shopped for more clothes on her own, adding blouses and skirts to her wardrobe, always favoring the teal hues that felt like her signature. Makeup sessions became meditative, the mascara wand a tool of transformation. Walking in the crimson heels felt like flying, each step affirming her identity. Elias supported her fully, helping with hairstyling, his own effeminacy now a shared strength rather than a point of division. They attended a local support group together, Dorothy in her white sandals, sharing her story with others on similar paths. Harlan adjusted too, using her chosen name without hesitation, even introducing her as his daughter to old friends. One weekend, Dorothy ventured to a nearby cafe alone, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, dress flowing as she sipped coffee and people watched. A young artist at the next table struck up a conversation, complimenting her poise. It was innocent, a spark of connection that hinted at new possibilities. As summer's end approached, Dorothy reflected on her growth. The empathy for Elias had blossomed into a profound self-understanding, her suppressed identity now liberated. Yet, uncertainties loomed. How would college react? What about extended family? On the last evening before fall, Dorothy stood on the back porch in her crimson heels, gazing at the stars. A distant rumble of thunder hinted at an approaching storm, mirroring the mix of peace and anticipation in her heart. Harlan joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders.
Whatever comes next, you're not alone.
Hope you enjoyed the story so far. The rest will be available on Patreon.